You have no assets left. Dad, face it. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut as I sat in the mahogany panel conference room of First National Bank. My son Jake stood there in his expensive suit, briefcase in hand, talking to me like I was a child who couldn't balance a checkbook. The banker, Mr. Williams, shifted uncomfortably in his leather chair. He'd called this meeting to discuss my financial situation, and somehow Jake had invited himself along. At 32, my son thought he knew everything about money because he worked at some fancy investment firm downtown. "Jake, please," I said quietly, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. The other people in the room, Jake's wife Amanda, the loan officer, and 2 bank executives, all stared at me with what looked like pity. "No, Dad, someone needs to say it." Jake's voice got louder. "You've been living in that old house for 40 years. Your truck is from 2003. You shop at thrift stores. You clip coupons like it's 1985. I looked down at my worn jeans and flannel shirt. Next to Jake's designer everything, I probably did look like someone who was broke. But Jake had no idea what he was talking about. None of them did. Let me back up a bit. My name is Walter, and I've been living a very simple life for the past 15 years. After my wife Mary passed away, I stopped caring about fancy clothes, new cars, or big houses. I kept working at the lumber mill until I retired 5 years ago. I grew vegetables in my backyard. I fixed things myself instead of hiring people. To everyone who knew me, including my own son, I was just a regular old guy getting by on Social Security and maybe a small pension. I never talked about money. I never bragged about anything. I just lived quietly and minded my own business. But Jake had always been embarrassed by how I lived. Even as a kid, he complained when I packed his lunch in old bread bags instead of fancy lunch boxes. In high school, he was ashamed when I picked him up in my beat-up truck. When he went to college, I paid cash for his tuition, and he never asked where the money came from. Now, sitting in that bank conference room, I realized he'd built his whole image of me around what he could see. The old truck, the simple clothes, the quiet lifestyle. He had no idea who his father really was. The meeting had started 20 minutes earlier. Mr. Williams, the branch manager, had called me in to discuss what he called some irregularities in my accounts. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I'd agreed to come in. When I arrived, Jake was already there with Amanda. I asked him to call me. He explained without apologizing. "Someone needs to look out for you. Dad, you're getting older, and I'm worried about your finances." The loan officer, a thin woman named Ms. Peterson, had a folder thick with papers. She kept glancing between me and Jake like she wasn't sure who she should be talking to. "Mr. Harrison," she began, then caught herself. "I'm sorry, Mr. Coleman. We've noticed some unusual activity in your accounts over the past few months." Jake leaned forward. "What kind of unusual activity?" Ms. Peterson looked uncomfortable. "Well, there have been several large deposits, transfers from various investment accounts. The amounts are significant." "How significant?" Jake asked, like he was my financial advisor instead of my son. That's when I realized what this meeting was really about. The bank wasn't concerned about my money. They were confused by how much of it there was. "Dad," Jake said, turning to me with that patient tone he used when he thought I didn't understand something. "Are you taking money out of your retirement accounts? Because there are penalties for that. Tax implications you might not realize." I felt my jaw tighten. Jake had always assumed I didn't understand money. When he was in college studying business, he used to explain basic concepts to me like I'd never balanced a checkbook. When he got his first job at the investment firm, he offered to help me organize my finances like I was some old fool who kept cash in coffee cans. "I'm not taking penalties on anything," I said quietly. "Then where is this money coming from?" Amanda asked. She had that fake sweet voice she used when she was trying to sound concerned but really just wanted gossip for her book club. Jake stood up and started pacing. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Dad, have you been giving money to those scammers who call elderly people? Have you been investing in some get-rich-quick scheme?" The room went quiet. Mr. Williams cleared his throat. "Mr. Coleman, perhaps you could help us understand the source of these deposits. We have regulatory requirements too." "I understand your requirements," I interrupted, looking him in the eye. The money is legitimate. It's mine. And it's legal. Jake threw his hands up. Dad, be realistic. Where would you get this kind of money? I could see the frustration building in Jake's face. He was used to being the smartest person in the room, at least when it came to his old man. For years, he'd been telling his friends and co-workers about his simple, working-class father who lived paycheck to paycheck. Look, Dad, he said, sitting back down and lowering his voice like he was talking to a confused patient. I know retirement is scary. I know you're worried about having enough money. But whatever scheme someone sold you on, we can fix it. We can get you out of it before you lose everything. Before I lose everything, I repeated slowly. Yes, because right now, based on what I know about your income, you should have maybe $40,000 or $50,000 total. Social Security, your little pension from the mill, whatever you managed to save over the years. Jake pulled out his phone and started typing. I actually calculated it once. Given your income history and spending patterns, you probably have enough to get by if you're careful, but not much more. Amanda nodded along like she was some kind of financial expert too. Jake's just trying to protect you, Walt. Elder fraud is so common these days. Ms. Peterson glanced at her folder again, then at Mr. Williams. Something passed between them, a look I couldn't quite read. Perhaps, Mr. Williams said carefully, we should review the actual account balances. Jake waved his hand dismissively. We don't need to go through all the details. The point is, Dad has no significant assets. He is vulnerable to scammers because he doesn't understand how modern finance works. That did it. I'd been quiet for 40 years, letting people think whatever they wanted about me. I'd let Jake believe I was just some simple mill worker who got lucky enough to raise a successful son. I'd never corrected him when he made assumptions about my intelligence, my education, or my understanding of money. But sitting there, watching him dismiss me in front of strangers, I realized I was tired of being underestimated. Jake, I said, my voice steady, you think I have no assets. Dad, it's not your fault. You worked hard your whole life, but mill wages don't create wealth. You did your best with what you had. I looked at Mr. Williams. Would you mind sharing the current balance of my primary checking account? The banker hesitated. Mr. Coleman, are you sure you want to? I'm sure. Jake laughed. Dad, this isn't necessary. We all know you're not rich. There's no shame in being a working man. Mr. Williams opened his folder and found the right page. His finger traced across a line of numbers. The current balance in your primary checking account, he said quietly, is $247,000. The room went completely silent. Jake's mouth fell open. Amanda made a small gasping sound. Ms. Peterson stared at her papers like she'd misread something. That can't be right, Jake stammered. Mr. Williams double-checked his papers. That's correct. $247,832, to be exact. But that's impossible, Amanda whispered. Walt, where did you get almost $250,000? I leaned back in my chair, feeling oddly calm. That's just my checking account. The one I use for groceries and gas. Jake's face had gone pale. Your checking account. Mr. Williams, would you mind sharing the balances on my other accounts? The banker looked uncomfortable, but he flipped through more pages. You have a savings account with First National containing $612,000, a money market account with $489,000, and several certificates of deposit totaling. He paused to calculate. Just over $1.2 million. You could have heard a pin drop. Jake was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Amanda's mouth was hanging open. So far, I said conversationally, that's about $2.5 million. Should I mention the other banks? Jake finally found his voice. Other banks. I nodded. I spread things around. Don't like keeping all my eggs in one basket. There's about $800,000 at Community Trust. Maybe $600,000 at First State. And then there are the investment accounts. Investment accounts. Jake's voice cracked. Stock portfolio through Schwab. Some mutual funds. Little bit of real estate investment trust money. Nothing too fancy. I paused. That's probably another $4 million, give or take. The silence in the room was deafening. Jake was doing math in his head, his lips moving slightly. Amanda had put her hand over her mouth like she was trying not to be sick. Mr. Williams cleared his throat. Mr. Coleman, that would put your total assets at approximately $7 million. Closer to 8, actually, I said, but who's counting? Jake finally exploded. What the hell, Dad? $8 million? How is that even possible? You worked at a lumber mill. You drove an old truck. You clipped coupons. I looked at my son, my successful, college-educated, investment firm-working son who thought he knew everything about money, and smiled. Jake, did you ever wonder how I paid for your college? Cash. No loans. No payment plans. Just wrote a check for $4,000 to $6,000. Jake was shaking his head like he could make this all make sense. But you always acted like money was tight. You never bought anything nice. You never went on vacations. You never even bought a new truck. I bought what I needed, I said simply. I didn't need much. But $8 million. Dad, people with $8 million don't live like you live. I shrugged. Some do. Some don't. I chose to. Amanda finally spoke up, her voice shaky. Whoa, where did all this money come from? Did you inherit it? Did you win the lottery? Neither, I said. I owned it. Earned it how? Jake demanded. Dad, mill workers don't earn $8 million. I looked at him for a long moment. My son, who thought he knew everything about his father's life, who thought I was some simple man who'd never understood the world beyond our small town. Jake, what do you know about my life before you were born? He blinked. What do you mean? I mean, what do you actually know about my life before 1987? Jake looked confused. You worked at the mill. You met Mom. You got married. And before the mill? I don't know. You never really talked about it. I nodded. No, I didn't. If you're enjoying this story and want to see justice served, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments. Now, back to the story. Dad, Jake said, his voice getting desperate. What aren't you telling me? I looked around the room. Mr. Williams was watching me intently. Ms. Peterson had stopped pretending to look at her papers. Jake and Amanda were staring at me like I was a stranger. Before I worked at the mill, I said slowly, I had a different job. What kind of job? I was a software engineer. Jake laughed, but it sounded forced. Dad, you barely know how to use email. I know how to use email just fine. I just don't see the point in using it more than necessary. Software engineer? When? Where? Microsoft, I said. From 1981 to 1987. The room went dead quiet again. That's impossible, Jake whispered. I was part of the team that developed early versions of what became MS-DOS. Later worked on Windows development. I had stock options, Jake. A lot of them. Jake was staring at me like I'd told him I was secretly an astronaut. When Microsoft went public in 1986, those stock options became worth quite a bit of money. You're lying, Jake said flatly. Dad, that's impossible. You don't know anything about computers. You still have that old flip phone. I have that old flip phone because it makes phone calls. That's all I needed to do. But you never mentioned Microsoft. You never talk about computers. You never even had a computer in the house when I was growing up. No, I agreed. I didn't. Why not? I was quiet for a moment, remembering Mary, remembering the decision we'd made together back when Jake was just a baby. Your mother and I decided we wanted a different life for our family. The tech world in the 80s was all about working crazy hours, chasing the next big thing, competing with everyone around you. We had enough money to live comfortably, so I took a job at the mill. Regular hours, steady pay, time to be a father. Jake was shaking his head. But Dad, you could have been rich sooner. You could have stayed with Microsoft, made even more money. I was already rich, Jake. Rich enough. More money wouldn't have given me more time with you and your mother. Amanda leaned forward. So you've had millions of dollars this whole time. The stock kept growing. I reinvested dividends, made some other investments over the years, lived simply, saved everything I didn't need to spend. Jake stood up and started pacing again, but this time he looked lost instead of angry. Dad, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me think you were struggling? You never asked, I said simply, and you never seemed to think it mattered. What do you mean? Jake, when you were in high school, you were embarrassed by my truck. When you went to college, you were embarrassed when I came to visit because I didn't dress like the other parents. When you got married, you introduced me to Amanda's parents as just a mill worker, like it was something to apologize for. Jake's face reddened. I never said I was embarrassed. You didn't have to say it. It was written all over your face every time you looked at me. The room was quiet except for the sound of Jake's expensive shoes on the carpet as he paced. But, Dad, if you had money, why didn't you? I don't know. Buy nicer clothes? Get a better truck? Live in a nicer house? Why would I? The clothes I have keep me warm and clean. My truck gets me where I need to go. My house has everything I need in it. But people judge you based on those things. Some people do. I agreed. Those aren't the people whose opinions I care about. Amanda was staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Walt, all those times we invited you to expensive restaurants and you said you'd rather eat at home. All those times we offered to buy you things and you said you didn't need them. I meant it. I said, I'd rather eat Mary's cooking than any restaurant food. And I really didn't need the things you offered to buy. Jake stopped pacing and looked at me. Dad, do you realize how this looks? You let me think you were poor while you were sitting on $8 million. You thought I was poor because that's what you decided to think. I never told you I was poor. But you never told me you weren't. Jake, when you got your first job, you made $35,000 a year and called to brag about how much money you were making. You talked about it like it was more than I'd ever seen in my life. Jake's face got redder. I was excited. When you bought your first car with a loan, you explained to me how car loans work, like I'd never heard of the concept. I was trying to help. When you got your mortgage, you spent an hour telling me about interest rates and amortization schedules. Jake was quiet now. Every conversation we've had about money for the past 15 years, you've talked to me like I was a child who didn't understand basic financial concepts. Mr. Williams cleared his throat. Perhaps we should return to the original purpose of this meeting. Mr. Coleman, we called you in because we wanted to ensure these large transfers were legitimate and to discuss your banking needs. I nodded. The transfers are from stock sales. I've been moving money around to take advantage of some CD rates. Everything's legitimate. And your banking needs. I'm satisfied with your service, though I might move some money to a different bank if these kinds of meetings become regular. Jake sat down heavily. Dad, I need to understand something. If you have $8 million, why do you live like you do? I thought about that for a moment. Jake, what do you think money is for? Security, comfort, opportunities. I have security. I'm comfortable. I've had every opportunity one wanted. I paused. Money is a tool. You use it to build the life you want. This is a life I wanted. But you could travel anywhere, buy anything, do anything. I could, but I don't want to travel anywhere else. I don't want to buy anything else. And I am doing what I want to do. Amanda shook her head. I just don't understand it. That's okay, I said. You don't have to understand it. Jake was quiet for several minutes, staring at his hands. Finally, he looked up at me. Dad, I owe you an apology. For what? For treating you like you didn't know what you were doing. For assuming you needed my help. For being embarrassed by how you live. I nodded. Apology accepted. But I still don't understand why you kept this secret. It wasn't a secret, Jake. It was private. There's a difference. What's the difference? A secret is something you hide because you're ashamed of it or because it would hurt people if they knew. Privacy is just choosing what parts of your life you share and what parts you keep to yourself. Jake was quiet again. Besides, I added, would it have changed anything if you'd known? What do you mean? Would you have loved me more if you'd known I was rich? Would you have respected me more? Would you have spent more time with me? Jake opened his mouth, then closed it. Or would you have just treated me differently? Would you have started asking for money? Would you have started bringing me to fancy places to show me off instead of hiding me? Jake didn't answer. Ms. Peterson had been quiet through most of this conversation, but now she spoke up. Mr. Coleman, given your asset level, you might want to consider our private banking services. We can assign you a dedicated relationship manager, provide investment advice. No, thank you, I said politely. I'm satisfied with my current arrangements. But with $8 million in assets, you could benefit from more sophisticated financial planning, estate planning, tax optimization strategies. I looked at her with amusement. Ms. Peterson, how long have you worked in banking? 7 years. And how much money do you manage for your clients on average? She hesitated. That varies. I've been managing my own money for 40 years. I've turned stock options worth maybe $50,000 into $8 million through careful investing and simple living. What exactly do you think you can teach me? Mr. Williams jumped in. Mr. Coleman, our private banking team has extensive experience with high net worth clients. I'm sure they do, but I'm not a typical high net worth client, am I? I don't want a yacht or a mansion or a fancy car. I don't want to impress anyone or join exclusive clubs. I just want my money to be safe and to grow slowly and steadily. Jake was watching this exchange with fascination. The approach I've been using seems to be working fine. Amanda finally found her voice again. Whoa, can I ask you something? Sure. When Jake and I got married, you gave us $5,000 as a wedding gift. If you had millions, why not give us more? I smiled. How much would have been enough? I don't know. 10,000? 50,000? 100,000? Amanda looked uncomfortable. Here's what I've learned about money. Amanda, giving people too much too easily doesn't help them. It hurts them. What do you mean? Jake has built a good career for himself. He's learned to manage money, to make smart decisions, to work hard for what he wants. If I'd been handing him big checks his whole life, would he have learned those things? Jake was staring at me again. The $5,000 was enough to help you get started, not enough to make you dependent on me. But Dad, Jake said, you could have paid off our student loans. You could have helped us buy a house sooner. Should I have? Jake thought about that. I don't know. You paid off your student loans in 4 years instead of 10 because you worked hard and made sacrifices. You saved for a house down payment by budgeting carefully and making smart choices. Are you proud of those accomplishments? Yes. Would you be as proud if I just handed you the money? Jake was quiet. Mr. Williams looked at his watch. Mr. Coleman, is there anything else we need to discuss regarding your accounts? Just one thing. I said, I'd like to add Jake as a beneficiary on my accounts. Jake's head snapped up. Dad, you don't have to. It's not about having to. It's about wanting to. You're my son. When I die, this money should go to you. Dad, that's a lot of responsibility. Yes, it is. Do you think you can handle it? Jake was quiet for a long moment. I hope so. I think you can. But Jake, I want you to promise me something. What? Promise me you'll think carefully about what kind of life you want this money to help you build. Don't let it change who you are. Don't let it make you think you're better than other people. And don't let it make you lazy. Jake nodded. I promise. I turned to Amanda. That goes for you too. This money is a tool, not a trophy. Use it wisely. Amanda nodded, looking overwhelmed. And one more thing, I said, I'm not dead yet. I plan to be around for quite a while longer. So don't start spending this money in your head. It's still mine. Jake laughed, and for the first time in the meeting, he sounded like my son again instead of a stranger. As we wrapped up the meeting, Mr. Williams handed me some papers to sign. Mr. Coleman, I have to say, this has been one of the most interesting client meetings I've ever had. Interesting how? Most of our high net worth clients want everyone to know about their wealth. They drive expensive cars, wear expensive clothes, live in expensive houses. They want recognition. And that seems strange to you. Not strange, exactly. But meeting someone who has significant wealth and chooses to live simply, it's refreshing, actually. I signed the papers and handed them back. Money is like a hammer, Mr. Williams. Some people use a hammer to build something useful. Other people just swing it around to make noise. Jake stood up and straightened his expensive tie. Dad, would you like to go to lunch? I mean, somewhere nice. I would like to go to lunch with you, I said, but can we go to Miller's Diner? I've been craving their meatloaf. Jake smiled. Miller's Diner it is. Amanda gathered her purse. Walt, I owe you an apology too. I've made a lot of assumptions about you over the years. No apology necessary, but maybe next time you'll ask questions instead of making assumptions. She nodded. I will. As we left the bank, Jake walked beside me instead of ahead of me like he usually did. Dad, can I ask you something else? Of course. Are you happy? I mean, with the life you've chosen. I thought about that as we walked to the parking lot. Jake, I had 43 years with your mother. I raised a son who grew up to be successful and independent. I had work that felt meaningful. I have enough money to feel secure. I have my health. I have a garden that produces good vegetables and a house that keeps me warm and dry. That doesn't really answer my question. Yes, I said. I'm happy. Are you? Jake was quiet for a moment. I thought I was. But now I'm not sure. What do you mean? I've been so focused on making money, on impressing people, on climbing the ladder at work. I'm not sure I've been paying attention to what actually matters. We reached his BMW and my old Ford. They looked funny parked next to each other. Jake, success isn't measured by how much money you make or what kind of car you drive. It's measured by whether you're becoming the person you want to be. Who do you want me to be, Dad? I smiled. I want you to be whoever makes you happy. Son, as long as you're kind to people and honest in your dealings, I'll be proud of you whether you're rich or poor. At Miller's Diner, Jake and Amanda sat across from me in the cracked vinyl booth I'd been sitting in for 20 years. Jake kept looking around like he was seeing the place for the first time. Dad, how often do you eat here? 2, maybe 3 times a week. Helen makes good coffee, and the pie is excellent. Helen? The waitress. She's worked here 15 years. As if on cue, Helen appeared with a coffee pot. Afternoon, Walt. The usual. Please. And Helen, I'd like you to meet my son Jake and his wife Amanda. Helen smiled warmly. Nice to finally meet you both. Walt talks about you all the time. After Helen left, Jake leaned forward. Dad, she knows you. Really knows you. I've been coming here a long time. But you're a regular person to her. She doesn't know about the money. Why would she? It's not relevant to our friendship. Amanda shook her head. Well, most rich people don't eat at places like this. Most rich people miss out on Helen's apple pie then. When our food came, Jake ate slowly, like he was thinking about something. Dad, I have a confession. What's that? I used to be embarrassed to bring friends here when I was in high school. I remember. I thought it made us look poor. And now, Jake looked around the diner again. At Helen refilling coffee for the truck drivers. At the old farmers playing checkers in the corner. At the working mothers having lunch with their kids. Now I think I was an idiot. Dad, can I ask you about Mom? What about her? Did she know? About the Microsoft money? Of course she knew. We made all the financial decisions together. Was she okay with living simply when you could have afforded more? I smiled, remembering Mary. Your mother was the one who suggested we move here and buy the small house. She said she'd rather have a husband who was home for dinner than one who was rich and never around. She never seemed to want for anything. She didn't want for anything. We had each other. We had you. We had enough money to feel secure. What else did we need? Jake pushed food around his plate. I think I've been doing everything wrong. What do you mean? The big house, the expensive cars, the fancy restaurants. Amanda and I are spending everything we make trying to look successful. Amanda nodded. We have almost no savings. Walt, we're living paycheck to paycheck even though we make good money. Why do you think that is? Jake sighed. Because we're trying to impress people instead of living our own lives. And how's that working out for you? Not great, apparently. I reached across the table and put my hand on Jake's arm. Son, it's never too late to change course. You're 32 years old. You have plenty of time to figure out what kind of life you actually want. Helen came back with coffee refills and stayed to chat for a minute. Walt, you must be proud of your boy. Jake, your dad talks about you all the time, always bragging about how well you're doing in the city. Jake looked surprised. He does. Oh, yes. My son, the businessman, he says, working hard, making an honest living. He's very proud. After Helen left, Jake was quiet. Dad, you tell people you're proud of me. Of course I do. You work hard. You're honest. You treat people well. Why wouldn't I be proud? But I thought you were disappointed in me. Why would you think that? Because I'm not like you. I care about money and status and material things. I laughed. Jake, I care about money too. That's why I have $8 million. The difference is I care about money as a tool, not as a scoreboard. What do you mean? I save money so I can have security and freedom. You spend money to try to show other people how successful you are. We both care about money, but we use it differently. Amanda leaned forward. Walt, would you teach us? About managing money. I mean, what would you like to know? How to save, how to invest, how to live within our means. I smiled. First lesson is free. Stop trying to impress people who don't care about you anyway. As we finished lunch, Jake pulled out his credit card to pay the check. Put that away, I said, reaching for my wallet. Dad, I can afford lunch. I'm sure you can, but you're my guest. Jake watched as I counted out cash for the bill and left Helen a generous tip. Dad, why do you pay cash? Because cash is simple. You spend what you have, not what you might have someday. But you lose rewards points, cash back, all those benefits. Jake, do you know how much you paid in credit card interest last year? Jake looked uncomfortable. Some. How much? Maybe $4,000. And how much did you get back in rewards? About $600. So you paid $4,000 to get back $600. Jake was quiet. Cash is honest money. Son, credit cards let you lie to yourself about what you can afford. On the walk back to our cars, Jake was thoughtful. Dad, I want to ask you a favor. What's that? Would you consider teaching me more about money? Really teach me, not just give me advice. What did you have in mind? Maybe I could come over on weekends. We could talk about investing, budgeting, making smart financial decisions. I smiled. I'd like that, Jake. And Dad? Next time, I'll call before I show up somewhere assuming I know what's best for you. That would be appreciated. That evening, I sat in my old recliner in my small living room, looking through the family photo albums. Pictures of Mary, pictures of Jake growing up, pictures of the life we'd built together in our simple house. My phone rang. Jake's number. Hi, son. Dad, I just wanted to say thank you. For what? For today. For being patient with me. For not making me feel like a complete idiot even though I acted like one. You weren't an idiot, Jake. You just made some assumptions. We all do that sometimes. Dad, can I tell you something? Of course. For years, I thought you were just ordinary. I thought I was more successful than you, smarter about money, better at life. And now I realize you're probably the smartest person I know. You figured out how to be rich and happy at the same time. That's harder than it looks. I smiled. It's not about being smart, Jake. It's about knowing what you want and not letting other people tell you what you should want. Will you really teach me? about investing and saving and living simply. I'll teach you everything I know, son, but the most important lesson doesn't have anything to do with money. What's that? The best things in life, love, family, friendship, purpose, peace of mind, you can't buy those things. Money can make them easier to enjoy, but it can't create them. Jake was quiet for a moment. I love you, Dad. I love you too, son. After we hung up, I went outside to check on my garden. The tomatoes were coming in nice this year. Tomorrow I'd pick some and take them to Helen at the diner. She always appreciated fresh vegetables. Standing in my backyard, looking at my small house and my old truck, I thought about the meeting at the bank, about Jake's surprise, about his assumptions, about the look on his face when he realized his poor father had $8 million. But mostly I thought about what I'd told him. Money is just a tool. The real measure of wealth isn't what you own. It's who you are and how you treat the people you love. Tomorrow, Jake would come over, and I'd start teaching him about money. But more importantly, maybe I'd teach him about contentment, about finding happiness in simple things, about being rich in the ways that actually matter, that, I thought, would be worth more than all the money in all the banks combined.